Here we are. We are recording.
We
Ma-
are recording.
how are you today, Baranda?
I am good because I'm with you. We got to spend some time together.
We had a whole hour to get our brains back in order from the chaos of Monday.
I
Um,
mean, let's not pretend like we're not living in a whole pandemic,
sure.
right? Remember before the pandemic when like someone would call you and you just hadn't talked all day and so your voice sounded like it had a frog in it?
Yeah. Yes.
Now in the pandemic, we can go whole days without actually like engaging with another human and not know how to our social has a frog in it. And so you and I just had to spend a little time getting human social again.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Kat. Kat Dimitrovich. I am the manager of design and narrative at Union. So all of the content that you see that Union does on socials, I'm behind the mask on that one. Or as the phrase we've been using in Still Loading, I'm behind the curtain on that one.
Woo,
Ooh.
yes, behind the curtain. And my name is Baranda Furman. My titles are Reverend Dr. Baranda Furman. I am a community curator here at Union Coffee, and also the community architect for a little thing called Trinity Underground that Union has been launching over the past couple years. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Woohoo.
Woo! Just a little thing, a whole other community.
Yeah, just like, casual.
Oh my God. So Kat and I wanted to get together. We are doing this a little backwards a little bit. We wanted to get together in the final podcast in this series of podcasts and talk about why we came up with the idea of still loading and what still loading even means. But that also means there will probably be additional episodes of the podcast where we talk about other things that are still loading.
There will definitely be. There will definitely be more episodes. I have so many ideas.
We
It's
have
just
so many ideas.
the timeline is very wiggly.
Well,
It's less of a line and more of like a squiggly, like when, or maybe more of like a question mark squiggle.
I mean, that is that's time in general. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, we're in a whole pancetta right now.
Yeah.
Like our lives are we are the wiggly line in history right now.
In 2 weeks, Miranda, we will have been living in quarantine for a year, an entire year of our lives. If time isn't squiggly, I don't know what is anymore. I don't even know what it is anymore because that's some squiggly time stuff.
That is definitely some squiggly time stuff. And so one of the things, Kat and I are we're very different people. For those of you who might watch the episode, you will see that we're very different people. You may be able to tell by our voices, although we both have very animated voices, and so maybe not.
I
But
think so.
I am much older than Kat.
But does not look it.
But I do look a completely different race and ethnicity than Kat, even though I don't look like I'm 41. I think I've got almost 20 years on you, I think. 15 at least.
Math. Why math?
Why math, right?
I'm 20. Okay. I'm 26.
Okay, yeah. So almost 15, not quite. So look, like there's a ton of differences between us, but one of the things Kat and I both like to do is like we could not have a proprietary recipe because we like to give people the secret ingredients to the sauce. We're like both of us are very much the people that are like, I love your outfit, and then we tell you where we got it, where to get it on sale. Like we will give you all the secrets.
Yeah, because we want you to succeed in your outfit putting together and feel as good as we do in our outfit.
Yes.
We both changed shirts for this interview.
We did. We both changed shirts. And so that's really sort of the energy that came up with the idea of still loading. And so I guess I'm no longer really new to the Union community. somewhat new.
I'm new.
And
I've
Kat
only
is
been here
new.
a year and a half.
Yeah, Kat's like super new. And we just really wanted to be able to share some things we have both, being fairly new, encountered with tons, like just curiosity and just like weirdness, trying to figure out like why people don't know how awesome union is, and also how hard we work to be that level of like awesome. People are always like, we love the vibe, we love the energy, we love the people. Well, okay, let's be honest, not everyone, but there are tons of people that usually don't fit in the rest of the world, that encounter union and are like, oh my God, this place is amazing. And we're like, how did you not know about it before? Like, why did you just get here? Like, what happened?
That's
And
how
we
I
would,
felt. When I first came here, I was like, how has this not been a thing that's been in my life for my whole life? Like, why isn't there one of these in every town? And
still,
so I think it's interesting that you mentioned our personalities are very forward. You know, as someone who's like, I've done some research into Union's personality, I actually think that Union's personality is opposite to ours in that, like, there's an air of mystery. Like, Union wants to pull you close and, like, teach you about Union, like, side by side. There's like things that you kind of have to dig for. And in the digging, is like the enjoyment. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I know what union is. And then you're like invested because you've done the digging. It's like how kids do the archaeology and they like find the bone, and then it's the
mhm,
finding the bone that is the exciting part. Union
yes,
is like that. But we're
so very much.
that's exactly what we're helping you guys find the bones of union here with still loading.
Right. Because part of what we do is we love a good story at Union, and we will tell you the truth. We will tell you the yucky, dark, dank truth about things in a very funny way. But if you don't ask, if you don't know where the bone is, if you don't know where to
Right,
find it, you may never find out that story.
right.
It's like I can remember going through photo albums with my grandmother and great grandmother and finding like photos of them like all dolled up, and finding out my great grandmother used to do cabaret. And I was like, what? Huh?
Amazing.
Yeah, no, my grandmother used to, and I was like, she's like, oh yeah, that was one of the nights before my show. And I was like, what show?
Yeah.
Right? And like, was my grandmother lying to me my entire life? No. Did I know to ask her that she had a show and did like cabaret? No, not until right. And so that union like lures you in, makes you feel all comfy and at home, and then like drops bombs on you of like some of the amazing and sometimes hard work that we do to be as welcoming and loving and challenging to the folks in our community as we are.
Mhm. What I think is so great about you and I collaborating on this project is that you know where the bones are and I don't know where the bones are. And so it's like it works really well because you know which questions to tell me to ask and I know to ask them. And then we find the bones together. Because I was just telling you earlier, Black history is not my forte. Like I don't know Black history as well as you do, but I'm coming at this from a perspective of like wanting to learn. Like I was really excited when you kind of presented this idea of doing these podcasts and learning about diversity, having big conversations, and I love that because I saw an opportunity there because I was like I would listen to that because I know I want to learn and I would want to learn those things. I definitely felt daunted of like doing the first one because I was like, what? I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think not only have I learned a substantial amount just in the two podcasts, but I feel like we have learned. Union has learned. Um,
doing these kinds of things, I would encourage, like, yeah, it's daunting, but doing these kinds of things as a community, if anyone has the idea to do this kind of thing, do it.
Mhm.
Because you will, as Kat said, you will learn. So I learned so much. I even had a couple of the misfits like text me after the last episode and say, oh, I thought this was just going to be another, like, we have discussions all the time. I thought it was just going to be another one of our community conversations, but my soul feels so inspired
Yeah.
by what went. And so I think that's like, even when we start to tell stories, or when someone starts to tell stories, you're like, oh my God, like, I know me, I get anxious. Like, is this going to be cringy? Am I going to feel embarrassed for them? Am I going to be embarrassed for me? Do they know that they're telling me this? Is this okay? But then you just settle into the story and it's like amazing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
that is, I think, one of the things that I love about storytelling being one of Union's values, because that is the way that you can connect with folks, even if someone is like me, anxious, or someone feels like you described, you felt like I really don't feel like I know enough
Mhm.
to contribute.
Right.
Like, listening to a story and seeing where you can connect or where you find a place of interest, even if you don't say anything. That's the greatness of storytelling, right? Like, I can
You're still
draw back
growing
and
and you're still learning just from listening.
just from listening. Or, as we tend to be sometimes, if I feel comfortable enough to like be forward, it's like one of the good things about a good story is like, oh, that reminds me of a time when. And then all of a sudden you start telling your story. And
Yeah.
now we're storytelling together. And I think that's part of the reason why, despite the fact at Union, maybe given the fact our today was the day our annual report dropped, and there's some amazing things in there about how we've grown as a community in being more diverse and being more inclusive. And maybe one day we will like have made some huge historical strides that will be like, here is Union's portion of Black History Month. Like, we are a part of Black history. If I get if I get ordained, right, a queer
When
Black woman ordained, Afro Latina woman ordained in the United Methodist Church, I am not sure how many of those exist, right? And so someday Union will be a part of that Black history, but right now we're just building community, and I think that's just as important.
yeah.
Right? I think that's just as important. That's Anybody love documentaries? Like, that's the whole point of documentaries, like the
Yeah.
backstory, right?
Yeah.
And
The
so,
foundation.
like, the foundations. And so when that happens, whenever we have those big moments for the denomination, for the world, for the city, someone's got to be able to pull up the backstory, and that's what I'm hoping Still Loading is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, is laying foundations easy, Miranda?
Okay, so my dad's a contractor.
Ooh, what a good question then. Okay.
Y'all, foundations are not easy.
No.
They are the hardest part. Like, the
Foundation.
hardest part is the foundation. Whether it's like pier and beam and only wood, or whether it's concrete, like, the foundation is the hardest part. Once the foundation can take like months to get it right, because you have to make sure the land is like flat, so you got to bring in sand, or you got to like dig it, or you got to
All the right materials.
all the right. If it rains, you gotta wait until it's all dry, and
If it snows.
if it snows,
If
like that, it had
the house
been
goes
100
out
years.
and you're freezing, you have to wait.
Wait. Once the foundation is laid, those of you that live in cities that have been experiencing a construction boom since like the mid 2010s or whatever, all of a sudden you see nothing. And then once the walls and the beams and all that stuff start going up, it's like, what do you mean? There's an apartment building there, there's an office building there, but the foundation can take months. But once the foundation is laying, like, no matter how long it took, like, it just pops up. But it takes forever for the foundation laying is not easy. is the short answer.
Yep. And that makes sense because still loading is not only is it called still loading, but it is on a constant still loading kind of being.
Well, I think that's, you don't want to halfway do, you don't want to do a foundation wrong.
Right.
Right.
You don't want to rush it because then it'll be bad and then the house will fall down.
Right. And one of the things that we have to realize when you're building a community or when you're transitioning a community, that foundation is actually more precarious than like a concrete or wood foundation because we're talking about relationships. Like, here's the thing: if something happens with a concrete foundation, even after it dries, it costs a little money, but you can like jackhammer it and like re-pour it. If you get the foundations of a relationship wrong,
it's hard to build.
It's hard to build from that. A lot of times you just have to sort of like scrap it and like go along and go on to another, relationship, another create. And that's in business partners, that's in, in friendships, that's in romantic relationships. Like, it can be hard when the foundation is wrong in a community to ever build that. You might be able to build something completely different, but to build that thing that you all had envisioned. And so one of the things that is the truth in our community, and is also the reason why we named the podcast Still Loading, is we are still figuring it out. And in figuring it out, there's this huge desire to like shine our light and make a podcast and say, hey, if you're trying to figure it out, we're willing to share some of our joys with you, and maybe you can try them and they'll work for you. But the brighter your light, the bigger your shadow is as well. And so there are tons of things that we're still trying to figure out. Like, is this moss or is this mold? If I eat this mushroom, is this the mushroom I'll die, or is this the magical mushroom? Like, I don't. There are still
tasty one to put in your pasta.
Right, or the tasty one to put in your pasta. And so there are some of those things that we're still trying to figure out, and sometimes that means you stop.
Yeah,
you stop for a little bit and you figure it out. So that, I mean, if you eat the mushroom that kills you, then everyone in the community dies. Like, it doesn't work. If you eat the magical one, folks don't die, but like, you're tripping for a little while and everyone's got to like come down before you can get any work done. And then if it's like, the one,
I feel like Still Loading has eaten 2 magical mushrooms, and then we were like given the option, do you want the bad mushroom or just the one to go in the pasta? And we're like, let's go with just the one to go in the pasta.
Right?
I feel like that's where we are right now. We're just eating the pasta mushroom right now.
We're just eating the pasta mushroom,
having a meal,
nourishing ourselves, figuring out what's going on.
Exactly.
And that isn't, I realize now that what Still Loading may be, even though we didn't realize it would be that, I'm hoping that Still Loading will be the invitation for organizations like Union, or organizations that are dreaming big and doing something much different than any of their other partner organizations or organizations they're in relationship with. I'm hoping it will be an invitation to not let anyone rush you. Because this month, we've learned that tending to those relationships that have made, that have opened our eyes and shifted our lens on the world so that we can be better allies and be better co-conspirators, that those relationships are so valuable. They are actually more valuable than any lens, right? And so we'll never get to where we want to be if we don't remain in those relationships. learning and growing and feeding ourselves and nourishing ourselves, and from time to time taking the time out to go on a trip with each other. And like, whoa, that's not how we thought this was gonna go at all, which has been Kat and I's experience as we've been like embarking on like telling this story and just realizing, oh, okay, so there's a storyboard and there's a story arc, and then there's real life.
And then there's real life, and then there's the trash can that you can put the storyboard in when real life comes in with a snowstorm. So
And I just think we have to be gentle with ourselves, particularly when we're talking about making the type of radical and revolutionary shifts as organizations. We're not just talking about, hey, as a person, I want to make this kind of change. We're then saying, I'm going to make this kind of change. I want to share the importance of that kind of change and the messiness of my journey with other people so that we can all make the change, and then we can change the system. And so I think what we realized and what we experienced is that is going to shift how productive production can be. And I think that's important. You know, one of the aspects, I can completely nerd out on this kind of stuff. Check out like my social media pages for this kind of nerd out stuff. But one of the things of like what Sonia Renee Taylor calls white supremacist delusion is like to create these systems that keep us on these hamster wheels where we go so fast.
yes,
We don't have any time to think.
Yes.
And really connect.
I feel that in almost every aspect of my life.
And maybe just slowing those down is making a shift.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that we work at an organization that when we hit those snags, it wasn't like produce a show at all costs.
Right. It was, no, yeah. And that's definitely union is like, we want to, it's quality. We aim for quality is one of our core values. And I think we definitely relied on that this time. And it's like, okay, well, we could either produce this in a week and hurry it and possibly damage our foundation, or we could actively and presently say, we are going to wait on purpose.
On purpose. Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that what we're doing is done with intention and with deliberation and like is exactly what we want it to be and isn't like thrown together.
Yeah. So, and the quality part and the intentional and deliberate part isn't just in the technical aspects. Like a lot of times when it comes to podcasts and it comes to work stuff, we think of polishing the presentation. We think of having all the right bullet points and proofreading. We think, right? We think of the production quality, but we had a vision for who we wanted to talk to in this, right, to answer these particular questions. And then we had a backup for who, if that person wasn't available.
Yeah.
And when all of those channels were like, we can't meet this timeline, we didn't just say, well, it's going to be good produced, like whoever can show up on this day, right, that answers it. Like the quality and the intention and the deliberateness is not only in the technical aspects, but also the relational aspects. We weren't going to like bulldoze our friends and pancake them into this, into the foundation, right? All of those things are just important when it comes to quality, right? The quality of the relationships, the quality of the technical aspects, and the quality of our vision. Like we will wait in order to have the vision that we want to have, which I think has helped us. You know, one of the things that we sort of talked about in both of the earlier podcasts is like the intention is to avoid tokenism, especially as it concerns diversity and inclusion. And tokenism happens so often. I don't have, I'm a sociologist. I don't have data on this. But if you listen to like when people are accused of tokenism, at least 40% of the time they didn't intend to do it. Right. They were like, I tried really, really hard not to Like it was in the forefront of my mind and I still ended up doing it.
Right.
And I think one of the aspects of us having to slow down on the episodes for this portion of the series, I think had to do with us not only having the vision and the intention to avoid tokenism and uproot that kind of behavior in organizations, but also the commitment to the fact that we wouldn't do it. Like our relationships were telling us, this isn't going to work for me, this isn't going to work for me. And so then instead of pushing it, we went with it. And then in reflection, we realized, oh, well, in order to like stick with our schedule, we would have had to sort of engage in some aspect of just like getting what whoever or whatever could fit the bill.
Which would have been tokenism.
But we didn't learn that until we slowed down.
Right.
Like, right? We started the whole project just trying to avoid tokenism and saying we're not quite sure how we end up there, but we just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And just slowing down enough allowed us as an organization to avoid it.
This is it.
This is it. And then reflect on
that. Yeah.
Means you're gonna buffer, you're still loading, you're not gonna load as fast as you want to. But you'll load with the quality that you want to load.
I feel like that analogy puts like a whole other meaning on this entire podcast. And it's like, it doesn't just mean that we're still loading and the fact that, because like my first impression of like when we were creating it and like we were branding it, is that still loading meant that eventually we will load. And like we're taking steps towards it. But I love having this new layer on it of being like, it also means you need to wait. It also means you need to take the time. Because loading, it's both of those things. Like you don't just go from 0 to 20. You don't just go from, let me upload this thing to it being uploaded. Although if you have really fast internet, sometimes it is. But there is some sort of in between where it takes the time for things to get put in its place and organized and understood and developed and created, and that is also what still loading is. And even though I've only done 2 episodes, I feel like it is a very full concept, and it is like there's so many places for it to go. I am really excited also because union is so many things, so we have so many ways to learn about diversity because we are so many things. Like we have a band, we can learn about music, we have we do social media, so we can learn about that, but we're church. So I would love to talk to a person of color who is in the ministry and like who like has experienced what that's like let's have that conversation. Let's have a conversation with the coffee shop person. Like how does coffee look different in different cultures and perspectives? Like there's so many places we could go and so many areas we could touch. And whenever that squiggly line of time comes around to touch those areas, I'm excited for it. But I love that you're just kind of like letting that be a part of the project, of that, let it take the time that it needs to. It's almost like a release, a release of anxiety. It's like, oh, I'm so anxious to have these conversations because I want to learn and I want to hear them and I think it's exciting, but also just like chill, get off the hamster wheel, chill. It will happen.
Yeah. I mean, and as someone who has like always been high energy and always had anxiety, although I didn't always know it was anxiety, sitting with like meditation and chilling out and sitting with that energy has helped me realize when something is anxiety and it's like, oh, that's an indicator that you're going in the wrong direction. Maybe you're moving too fast, or maybe you're not really listening to your friend. Versus when it's excitement and it's like, oh, no, this feeling, this is exciting. This collaboration with Kat is money. This conversation with the band is really helpful, right? And just sitting with that feeling for a little while helps you know which direction to go, because we have all been trying to load something or something's buffering, and we stop it just as we see, like, because it goes from like 23% to like 87%, and then it goes back down to 15, and you're like, you're gonna have 5 hours. I don't have 5 hours. And then just as you're like stopping it and gonna like go do something else, it says 99, but you stopped it.
Yeah.
And so we all have had that moment where, like, just before it came in clearly, like, we aborted mission.
Mhm.
And I just think this idea of being comfortable with still loading and just sitting with it
Mhm.
helps us get clear about what direction to go next.
Yes. I feel that in my bones. Let's take it full circle to the bones. I love that we've used like 10 million analogies just in the last hour and a half that we've been talking, on recording
You
and on recording.
get two creative minds like us together,
The analogies will be non-stop.
non-stop. This is the drinking game to play while you listen to Still Loading. How many analogies
Yes,
will Kat and Miranda use?
and take drink every time you have one. Every time we do
That's a
one.
new one.
That's one right there. That's an analogy right there. You should all be drinking.
Should all be drinking.
Okay, Baranda, what should people do if they've listened to this and they are just so inspired and they have an idea for still loading?
So if they have an idea for Still Loading, like, obviously if you found Still Loading, I'm assuming you know what our social media channels are. So if you have an idea for Still Loading, because we're going to be doing some more episodes, send us a message, DM Union Dallas on Instagram and
And
Union
Facebook.
and Facebook. Kat and I both are on the social medias too. So if somehow you can manage to spell our names, stumble upon us. We both Sabbath on Friday. So if you send us a message on Friday, you may not get an answer on Friday, but if you send us a message, we will get back with you. But hit up Union social media pages. Anybody will check out one of our online gatherings. There's a ton of fun stuff going on at Union, and we love working with new ideas. And we love workshopping new ideas. We have a couple of communities where they are writing groups and idea groups. And so if you fit in with any of those groups and want to like come up with an idea that we can pilot, or you can pilot in your community, or we can do it together, connecting with us on the social medias is definitely a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Union, if you have an idea and you need a home for it, we have space, we have places.
We have space, we have places, and we usually have a person that is willing to go out on a limb with you.
Yeah.
Regarding your harebrained idea. We are full of harebrained ideas.
So true.
So many sentences that turn into actual things begin with, I'm just wondering if.
What if we did this? Have you ever thought about this?
So yeah, we check out the podcasts, the 2 other episodes in this series. If you want to continue one of those conversations, I think we're super open to it. The band love having that conversation, and they're still working on new ideas. I know, Kat, you're still helping us get our social media life together. So yeah, just hit us up on social media, and we are the idea incubator at Union.
Yeah. Okay, well, Miranda, thank you so much, not only for like this specific conversation, but also for like your beautiful brain that brought this project. So wow,
Thanks.
so good.
because it ended up being much more work than we thought, than we initially had planned. But it was a labor of love.
Labor of love, definitely worth it. Definitely need to make sure I have my Sabbaths because of it, but
But you also are now one Kevin Bacon away from Erica Badu. So
which I still haven't told my little sister, who is obsessed with Erica Badu, and I'm like waiting to drop the news.
oh
I know. It's gonna be a big day. Yeah.
yeah. So
But
it's
she's
well
still
worth it.
cooler than me because she's in a rock band. So
Is in a rock band.
this is just me trying to catch up.
But the fact that being in a rock band and you're not in a rock band and you are now way more Kevin Bacon's closer to Erica Badu than she is definitely a sister envy point. Like
it definitely helps. And for those who don't know, my sister's 12. So
the younger kids are always cooler than us. This is why I love working with you, because you're cooler than me. It gets me cred.
I do not agree with that. But okay. But also I take the compliment. I'm learning to do that. Okay.
So
I think that was a very thorough and wonderful discussion about discussions, and I loved it.
so meta.
So, okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Follow us and blah, 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 and all of that. And that's all.